Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phillip Wylie Show. Today I have Christophe Foulon joining me today. We've been connected through InfoSec, Twitter, or X as it's called now, and also through LinkedIn, just kind of known each other through the community. He's a fellow podcaster, and neither one of us have been on each other's show yet, so I'm glad to have Christophe joining today. Welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, I'm amazed that it took so long for us to get together, but excited to be on your show and happy to have you on breaking into cybersecurity sometime as well.
Yeah, that would be great. So a lot of the listeners we have here are people trying to break into cybersecurity. There's some other folks that are more experienced, but good to have you on since that's something that's near and dear to your heart, helping others get into the cybersecurity industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do a lot between the Breaking into Cybersecurity podcast, writing a couple of books myself, like Hack the Cybersecurity Interview. And now I focus on helping small businesses with maturing their cybersecurity program. So kind of full circle, but a lot of it focuses on really education, advising, and coaching either individuals or leaders on how to do things safely or how to enable the business using technology.
Yeah, very cool. So before we get started, if you wouldn't mind sharing your hacker origin story, kind of how you got started, and it's very helpful for folks that are trying to break in to hear the stories of the guests.
Yeah, so my story is as an 8-year-old kid in the Caribbean, the island PC tech, she was working on our family's business to upgrade it from Windows 95 to Windows 98. It required a larger hard drive than the machine had, and it was all torn apart with motherboard and cables and everything out. And I'm like, what is this? And she sat there and walked me through like the different components and everything like that. And I was just hooked. I ended up spending the next couple of summers in her internet cafe every day, either researching or helping her upgrade machines, remove viruses, things like that. So that's really what got me hooked. As I grew up, going to school, I found most of the education at the time was all focused around science and math for computer science or cybersecurity. And I wasn't that type of person. I like to work with the individual, find out what they were trying to do, and then help them achieve that in a safe way that didn't put them in more risk. So I ended up going to business for my master, and not until like 2008 when everything crashed again, and I was in sales at the time, I decided, you know what, if I'm going to grind so hard, might as well grind for something I love doing. So quit my job, went out and got the A+, Net Plus, Security Plus certifications. Not like I really had to study hard because I already knew all the material. I just needed the paper. And unfortunately, because back then you had to get the certs just to get the interview. And unfortunately, it hasn't changed much since. But yeah, that was my reason for officially getting certifications, and focus started on helping companies through their help desk. And on day one, someone had a Post-it note on their keyboard with their username and password. And I said, there's got to be an easier way. So from there, I started rather focusing just on help desk. I was like, how can we help them do this in a safer way, in a more efficient way? And it was a long journey to quote unquote get my first security title. It was almost 8 to 10 years later when I got my first role, but I grew up leading help desk teams, leading operations, understanding all that. And then I went into consulting. Kind of was doing consulting anyway, internally at least, but now I'm doing external consulting, helping big tech and government with deploying their infrastructure in the cloud and helping people understand the shared responsibility with digital transformation and with using cloud service providers, which still a misnomer today. A lot of folks still need a lot of education around that. But yes, my focus has always been on helping the user do things safely. So I'm not a traditional hacker. Don't get me wrong, I can hack through a JSON and look up SPL for Splunk and figure out how the query language works to get what I need and create infrastructure with code because I understand where the variables go and where the secrets are hiding. But that's all around like determination around figuring out what I need to get done and finding a safe way to do that.
Very cool. So, based on your experience getting into cybersecurity and after helping a lot of other people, what's your recommendations for people that are wanting to get into cybersecurity?
So today on Breaking into Cybersecurity, we had Catherine Ullman, and in DFIR, she was like, really figure out what you want to do. And that's the same thing that I tell the folks that come through the whole Cyberhuman initiative, which is a nonprofit we set up for veterans transitioning into cyber. It all starts on the foundation of self-discovery and figuring out where in cyber you want to go. What do you want to do? Do you want to focus on cloud, network, endpoints? There's so many different rabbit holes to go down to, but you should really kind of explore all the different areas and figure out what you're naturally interested in. But be deliberative in how you approach it. I think too often folks just say, I want to get into cyber and pick and get any role that they want, and they'll find themselves frustrated or burnt out because they didn't really do any investigation as to whether sitting behind a desk as a SOC analyst and looking through logs all day is something that aligns with their natural spirit or the way that they do things. And hate to say fuzzy about it, but that's really what you have to figure out. If it doesn't align with you, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get frustrated. Not every day is going to be easy, but if every day is like climbing up a hill with green moss on there and you're slipping down all the time, you might want to consider if that's really what you want to do.
Yeah. So what are some ways you recommend for folks to try to discover what it is they would want to do in cybersecurity?
So in the US, individuals have access to an assessment called CyberNights, cybernights.us. And what it does is it kind of allows you to go through a quiz about some of the skills and competencies that you have. And then after you complete it, it kind of breaks out some of the cybersecurity roles in alignment with the NIST framework that kind of shows where those skills and competencies can be applied, and then some of the roles that apply with that. From there, you can go over to the NIST framework, and they have a workforce career option where you can kind of see where those roles can go. Or if you start as a SOC analyst, how do you end up to a CISO? And some of the jobs that go along with that. That's one way. The other way is really ask your friends that are in cyber, like, what do you do all day? Tell me, in a traditional day, what do you do? Do you sit down and parse logs all day? Or do you call users and have them power it on and off? And that's the extent of your work. So kind of figure out, like, what are some of the things that they do in their roles, and if that's something that's interesting to you. And then use that as potentially an anchoring point to go investigate those roles and go research more about what those roles would do, and if they're in alignment with what you want to do.
And you kind of mentioned, some of the certifications you had. Do you think that's still a requirement these days? Does it still require that you have some kind of cybersecurity certification to break into the field?
I hate to say it's a requirement, but almost, well, let's put it this way. If you're working for the federal government, or supporting any organization that supports the federal government, more than often it is a requirement, because the government requires that in their contracting, and therefore any contracting agency that wants to fill that contract needs individuals with those roles. So yes, there. Then in the private sector, it becomes one of those things to get you past or get you in the door of the individuals that are making the decisions, get past the recruiter or get past the ATS system to get you up. But it's not, it's becoming less of a hard requirement today, but it still is something to get you in the door, unfortunately.
Yeah, very, very good advice there too, because it's interesting how some of the big four consulting companies used to require a 4-year degree, but several years back, they eased up on that requirement. So it's kind of good to see organizations easing up on that and looking at non-traditional routes into cybersecurity, opposed to having to have a computer science degree or cybersecurity degree to break into the field.
In line with that, some of the big fours are even hiring directly out of college, and sure, then they have the degree requirement, but they're putting their interns or their new hires through a 4 to 6 week boot camp like experience to see where in cybersecurity they might be or might be interested in, have them go through, get the certifications, and that becomes a requirement for their onboarding and hiring. So they're almost doing what you're telling the rest of the industry that they need to do, and fulfilling it that way. But I see other organizations, some big commercial organizations, contracting out vocational type education work to companies to shift through their internships and to have their interns go through this program and complete an assessment at the end to see how they would fare in doing such a role for that organization.
Yeah, very interesting. And another consulting company that I think is kind of interesting is NetSpy, because they have NetSpy University. And so it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like an internship, but I think it's, from what I understand, they bring in more people than your typical internship. A lot of companies will bring in a few students, but they seem to bring in quite a few. And from what I understand, it's a paid internship. And from someone I know that was actually considering it, was pretty decent pay for what they're doing, but they went in there and they learned how to do pen test. And so they gave them like the Web Application Hackers Handbook as their study guide, and they actually go through proper training, to be able to learn those skills hands-on in a production environment.
Yes, I hear of that happening more in Europe than here in the US, but it is catching on as a way to grow your stakeholders here in the US. And I often felt that was the gap with a lot of companies, is that they're saying that they need talent in these areas, And they might hire some with the base requirements, but then they would never really enforce the education for them to grow and build up. And instead, they would hire from outside someone that had that experience somewhere else. But if every company did that, you'd still have a limited set of talent pool for their whole industry. So I'm seeing more and more companies that are investing in that continuous education internally, and creating options for stakeholders inside to have that continuous education and to work on different projects, more so than just, hey, here's $2,000 for the year in continuous education. It's like, no, that plus, hey, we have Pluralsight access, we have Udemy access. You need to do at least 40 hours of this type of training within the year. Plus, you still have that conference budget to go to, or that training budget that you can use as well.
Yeah, one of the things I think companies need to do as well is take their internal IT talent and train them up for security roles, provide them a path. Because if you're trying to look for affordable staff, and I'm not saying undercut people, but if you find someone in IT, you can train them up. One of the big bonuses, they know the environment, they know some of the people internally, because even if you bring in a seasoned professional, they're going to have to learn your industry, they're going to have to learn your systems and all that. If you have someone that already knows that, then you teach them the security piece, and then you're also providing a career path, because not all companies are providing a career path. You come in, and if you're really good at what you do, then sometimes you may not ever get to move in that role because you're just too good at it. They don't want to replace you. And so I think that I'd like to see more of that as well, just where train people, because you got a baseline that you kind of know their work habits, their skill set. And so you kind of would be able to find candidates. And like you said, offer some training courses internally, like Udemy licenses and those different online CBT platforms. Let them use that and just kind of gauge their interest by how much time they're putting in, and let them, get trained to do some internal stuff, or even let them shadow different teams to kind of see if they'd be a good fit in those different areas.
Yeah, at one of the last Fortune 100 companies that I worked at, I worked to help create internal security pathways and provide internal resources for individuals that, say, were in a supporting department, IT, or even one of their business units that was interested in IT. Maybe they took one of the roles within those business units while they were going to school, but oftentimes large organizations might not recruit for cyber talent internally, but they have individuals that are interested in those types of roles, and they often get locked out of the internships for cybersecurity graduates, even though they meet that requirement, but no, because they're an internal stakeholder, they can't go through that path. So we work to try to create some internal ways that hiring managers would consider them to move into those similar type roles via internal career paths versus leaving and coming back a couple months later.
Yeah, some of the things you mentioned earlier makes me think that one of the things I'd really like to see companies do, that you used to see this a long time ago in different trades and stuff, is to have apprenticeships.
Yes.
Because one of the things is, if you're not going to college, you can't get an internship, because usually that's a requirement. You're somewhere within your degree plan to be even considered. But if you sit there and offer these apprenticeships and you let someone come in the duration you would an intern, then one of the things you're doing is, if they come in, do a good job, then maybe you've got a potential good employee. If not, then you've given someone some experience that's going to make it easier for them to go somewhere else and get employed.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've actually promoted a lot, is the theory of apprenticeships. And some states, like, for example, Texas, has a really great vocational program within their degree requirements, that schools have these hands-on activities as a part of their final graduation, versus oh, no, this is something that you have to do separately. But I think having these vocational requirements and these hands-on training requirements should be something that we should be shifting towards, and even promoting after the fact, not just for, say, individuals that might have been displaced from employer activities or economic activities, and you're trying to get them reintroduced to the workforce, but no, to build up the workforce in the areas that these companies are headquartered, because you need to have a continuous pipeline of individuals within a metro area that you're headquartered. So reinvest in the community, reinvest in the schools, in their programs. Say, these are the types of skills and competencies that you're looking for their graduates to have. And if you're a big enough employer in those areas, they will start to listen to you. And you can even volunteer time to teach a course or to take in students as part of an apprenticeship for a semester or something like that. And we've done that as the whole Cyberhuman initiative. We had a program in South Florida where we had a group of students complete a semester type of work. We gave them assignments to do, and part of the career development that someone going through the whole Cyberhuman initiative training would have as part of their schooling requirements, and then created a capstone write-up for them and help that become part of their grade.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think really it'd be nice. I'd really like to see more companies get involved in the education process, even outside of the apprenticeships, because, you know, there's this gap there. And I don't know, it's sometimes for me, it's kind of hard to believe that there's a shortage. I think sometimes people aren't given a chance. They're wanting too much, but really if companies would be more involved and try to help, they can help as a whole. Because really, when you look at cybersecurity, we really need to be thinking about this globally outside of our organizations, because the more secure we are, the more, you know, even down to end users outside of those working cybersecurity jobs, the more secure we are as a whole, we're going to be more secure as a nation or globally if you're educating those people. So one of the things I was impressed with last year at Black Hat Middle East and Africa was that they didn't charge for people to get in the conference. And I saw more women and more students there than probably any conference I'd ever seen before. But if you're really wanting to invest in your cybersecurity future, then making sure to make those things available to students and those that don't otherwise get those opportunities to help grow that workforce.
Yeah, and I hate to say this so many times, but like the whole Cyberhuman initiative, we developed that as an open source, do-it-yourself program where we use educational offerings from AWS, from Microsoft, from Hack the Box, and created a program that people can go through and use at no cost, because this is open educational training that's out there, so that folks can complete that. While we focus it here on U.S. veterans and U.S. candidates, it's open to anyone in the world. The next thing I do is I'm a chapter chief for InfraGard, which what that does is that builds the relationship between organizations and the FBI as well as the rest of the federal government, so that if there is an incident, there's open channels of communication, but then we also have communication back on the types of activities that you're seeing from threat actors, so that they can better prepare and become more resilient as an organization against the types of activities from threat actors, without potentially having to scale their program and have additional analysts to gather this information. It's been centralized and provided by the government, collecting information from other InfraGard members, from CISA, from other programs, so that they get this type of material to prepare themselves.
So what are some of your recommendations for folks that are looking for a job? Maybe you got your certification and you're starting to look for jobs. What are some of your recommendations there?
Well, I would say hunt for a job like a threat actor is hunting for an opportunity. So you figure out the goal that you want at the end, and then use techniques and procedures as a threat actor might. So say you want a job at Nike. Okay, well, figure out who the people are at Nike in the department or in the role that you might be interested in. Reach out to them, talk to them, see if the culture is the right fit for you, see if they have open roles, talk to them about what their experience is. And as you build those bonds and relationships with them, then they're more open to potentially making a referral or sharing your resume with a hiring manager. And that's a social engineering technique that a threat actor might use, but you're using that as a way to advance your career. They say spear phishing is kind of going straight after the person that you want to lure. Find out who that hiring manager is and reach out directly to them. Share a welcoming invitation to have a chat, or mention something about what they posted on social media that got you interested. Respond on their post and engage with them, kind of build that relationship with them and see if it is really the type of role that you want. Because oftentimes there will be job descriptions that say one thing, and then you talk to the hiring manager and it's really, you're looking for C, D, and E versus A, B, and C. So there might be some overlap, but somewhere along the lines, the requirements changed, or and they were copy and pasted from another job rec. So you really want to drill into what the requirements are versus what the on the job requirements are. So social engineering, talking to people, reaching out directly, not just sending your resume through on the ATS system. Find other ways in and use the techniques that threat actors might use for your own benefit.
Yeah, those are some great recommendations. And one of the things for people listening to consider too is a lot of cases people get referral bonuses, and sometimes that's enough of a lure for someone to recommend you. I mean, some of these companies are paying, $3,000, $5,000 referral bonuses. Some maybe not as much, but I don't know about you, but I know most people could afford a few thousand or a few $100 extra.
Especially if you're working for a federal government contractor and you have a clearance. Yeah, the bonuses for individuals with that type of background usually is pretty nice. But even for non-cleared roles, they'll get a couple hundred to a couple thousand. And if you build that comfort level, if you build that level of confidence in your background, they're then more willing to refer you. Because I could say, oh yeah, I talked to Philip, seemed like an interesting guy. We talked about this, and this. I think he might be a good fit for a role. You're not saying I worked with him for 10 years, but you're being honest about the level of engagement and interest that you have while you chatted with them. And that's enough for hiring managers to go, okay, yeah, if you're working here, you understand the job culture here, you understand the requirements here, and you think that they might be a good person to talk to, yeah, I'll put them on top of the list and have a conversation with them.
Yeah, that's great advice. I couldn't agree more. So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to share that we haven't discussed, or any closing words?
I would say if you truly want to be in cybersecurity, this is a role where you need to be eternally curious. You need to be studying and learning and finding out more about A, what you're interested in, and B, what might be interesting coming down in the future. So, for example, 5 years ago, before ChatGPT, I was kind of interested in what are the evolutions of artificial intelligence that are coming out. And then when ChatGPT exploded and everyone was like, oh, I'm using that, then it was like, okay, well, everyone's dumping their data in here. What sort of protections went into ensuring that your confidential information didn't go in? So I took a step back and go, okay, where's the data governance here? Where's the classification and identification of data? How companies develop these programs? So while this might be basics in regards to some people for setting up a security program, oftentimes it's skipped over. And the business just wants to get the results without thinking about the implications along the way. So keep an eye out on these trends and do your own research so that when some of these things are popping up in your organization, you can talk intelligently about the pros and cons and the risks about it. Or even in an interview, the fact that you've researched that this company is looking to go into this segment and you have something intelligent to say about it to the interviewer, usually is a good sign to them.
Well, thanks for joining, Christophe. It was great to finally get you on the show and actually talk to you. We've only messaged through Messenger on LinkedIn and so forth and Twitter, but it's great to finally get to chat with you, and enjoyed hearing about your story and about all the great things you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I must say, I love the classic Dr. Pepper vending machines you have in your background there.
Thank you. My wife's a collector. She's been collecting since she was a child. Her first collector item was like a bottle, and now she's got 2 other Dr. Pepper machines besides that, a bunch of bottles, cans, clocks, signs, just about everything you could think of.
I just have books that I'm collecting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm an auditory person, so I listen more. So I listen to podcasts, I listen to audiobooks, but I like having a physical copy to refer back to sometimes. So it's quite interesting how we learn in different ways.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's nice to have the written books, but yeah, it's audio. Same here, podcast. I learn better that way, but just trying to find something quickly and be able to look at that data is printed is better in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Phil.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Phillip Wylie. Until next time.